Simon from Footballguys.com, back for some more Draft Dominator auction drafting videos. We're always telling our customers how important it is to have a draft list that is specific to your league settings, your scoring setting, the number of teams, and the lineup requirements for your league being the three most important factors. The problem with auction drafts is you can do that and come up with some dollar values, get into the draft and find out that everyone else is using dollar values that value the players completely differently. And even if technically you may have priced them correct, you can find yourselves in some uncomfortable positions like not having any studs at all or having no money left at all at the end of the auction. With auctions, having a system that can adapt to both the league settings and what's happened so far in the draft, I would argue is actually far more important than snake drafts. Now for auctions, you're just going to have one strategy here, which is studs and duds. And there's something else going on in the background too. But first we're going to talk about studs and duds. Let's put studs and duds to 100%. So this is going to tune the app in to a strategy where we're going to overpay for players at the top of the draft and end up with 3 or 4 studs and then a bunch of $1 duds. Okay, so let's quit out of this. So you can see he jumps all the way up to $79. Now what you're going to do, if you scroll down, we're going to see the players are going to drop off sooner. So these players are worth less than they might otherwise be. So let's take Carl Rudolph as an example at $3. Okay, so we've got Carl Rudolph at 3 and we've got Ezekiel Elliott at 79. Now if we move studs and duds all the way down to 0, you can either do that by dragging that slider down, or you can come in here and just type whatever number you want. So let's put it down to 0 and hit enter. So now you can see this brings Elliott all the way down to 26. And if we carry on scrolling down the list until we find Carl Rudolph, he's there on 11. So he's gone up from 3 to 11. Our recommendation here is you leave this to auto. And I'll explain shortly what that does. So other people are going to come into your draft, and the first few players off the board are probably going to be overpays, and they usually are in an auction draft. And what the Draft Dominator is going to do is it's going to use the extent of that overpay to automatically calibrate the studs and duds slider. So let's just illustrate that by pretending that these players at the top of the draft list are all being overpaid for. So let's pretend Ezekiel Elliott has gone to $70 to King Cam, and let's pretend that Christian McCaffrey has been nominated and he's gone for $70 as well. And just one more, let's do Alvin Kamara for again $70. Now, let's have a look at what that's done to the studs and duds slider. It's moved it to 75%. What it's trying to do is it's trying to create the line of best fit that matches the values that have already been recorded in this draft. So it's saying for the players who've already been auctioned off, for the values that they have gone at, we would have needed a studs and duds slider at 75% to inflate values to that amount. Okay, so on the face of it, the studs and duds slider is just adjusting all of our values up or down to match how everyone else is bidding. So if everyone else is overpaying, our argument is you should overpay too, because if you don't, then you're going to get in a position where you have no studs at all and you end up with 16 fairly good players. But 16 fairly good players is not going to get you a 9-player starting lineup that is optimal week to week, because you're going to have 7 players on your bench with wasted fantasy points, scoring good points, but they don't go towards your lineup. So that's why we suggest that you move up and down to a certain extent according to what other people are doing. Do we recommend just matching what everyone else is doing in the auction exactly? No, because there's something else the Draft Dominator is doing. This is something that was first done by our Draft Dominator Classic tool. And that is we're changing values according to 2 factors. The first factor is which players are left and how many fantasy points over baselines do all of those players collectively have. The second factor is the Draft Dominator, and you can see this here in this list of teams here. It's tracking how many auction dollars every team has left. So it can very easily just add up all of those, and it's got an amount of dollars left in the auction. What we can then do is take the fantasy points over baselines of all the players, divide that through the dollars, and we get a point per dollar metric, which we can then use to assign auction values to every player left in the pool. The calculations are a little more complicated than that because we need to accommodate for minimum bids as well. So actually, it's kind of like an auction dollar over minimum bid for each player that we think is going to be auctioned off in the rest of the draft. And this is always going to run counter to studs and duds. So while studs and duds is going to say, well, Kamara and these other guys have all gone for $70, the Draft Dominator is also going to know in the background that there are fewer auction dollars left in the draft than there should be at this point. So the amount that you should have to pay for each player also goes down. So these two factors are just going to come together perfectly and find what we call the auction biting point, which is where everyone else is just running out of dollars and you can jump in and get players on the cheap using these retail values.